Hey guys, my name is Samiran Rao and welcome back to Pixel Hunt. How's it going? I know these are strange times. We are all locked in our houses due to the coronavirus pandemic. Things are getting stranger and stranger every day and no one really knows what to do. I mean, this is going to be one of those historic times that people will be talking about long after it's over. I mean, I asked my grandmother where she was during the moon landing or when India got its independence. People will be talking about the pandemic of 2020 in the same way. Where were you when the pandemic of 2020 was happening? And things are getting really weird, especially this week. Some people were suggesting that we hit our bodies with strong ultraviolet radiation to see if it cures the coronavirus. Also, people really flocked to the beaches in California because of the heat wave in the midst of a lockdown. And also, I have this friend whose name is Prasad who chose to change his name to Salam this week. I mean, great, but is this really the time to do that? Anyway, guys, I have an editing tutorial for you today where we'll be using Photoshop to change this picture to look like this. Just a little bit about how I captured this picture. I knew that this is what I wanted to do with it later because I saw an Instagram post that did the similar thing to a face of a cat, and I thought, why not do it to a face of a person and see how it goes. The way I shot it was I got my Canon 6D Mark II, that's the one right here, and I used the Sigma 35mm f1.4 lens. This is a great lens. It's actually almost a macro because it goes really close to the subject. So I stood pretty close to the lens in this photo and it was still able to focus properly. Anyway, so I used the aperture 120D to light my face from one side. It's slightly angled so that there's a dark section of the face. So my settings for this image were shutter speed 1/50, f8.0 was the aperture, and ISO 1250. Anyway, so I said the aperture was set at f8.0. The reason for this is that the depth of field becomes really narrow when you stand really close to the lens or when your focusing distance is very small. So in order to compensate for that, you need to really close down your aperture so that the depth of field becomes much more deeper and you have your whole face in focus. So that's why the aperture was set at f8.0 in this case. Alright, to start off with the editing process, let's just make a few slight adjustments in Lightroom and then move it over to Photoshop where we'll be doing most of the editing. Okay, so with Lightroom, the first thing I want to do is enable profile corrections under lens corrections. This removes the slight distortions that the lens creates. The next thing I want to do is reduce the temperature a little bit so that this image has a kind of a cooler feel. That's what I'm going for with this image. And then lastly, I just want to crop this image so that first of all, it is the 4:5 ratio that Instagram uploads generally are. I also want to crop in on the face and make it look like a real close-up image. Okay, now time to move it over to Photoshop. Okay, so we have the image open here in Adobe Photoshop. The first thing I want to do is create a duplicate layer so that I don't make any changes to the main layer and I have it preserved if I do something wrong. I want to convert this duplicate layer to a smart object so that any changes I make can be modified or undone later. The first thing I noticed with this image is that the right shoulder is kind of different from the left shoulder. So I want to make it more symmetric and bring the right shoulder a little bit lower so that it matches the left shoulder and the symmetry is maintained. So I want to warp this image, so I'm going to hit Command T and then right click and choose warp, create a few control points here and then bring down the right shoulder. Alright, so now it's looking more symmetric. This is the before and after. Okay, so time for spot healing. The next thing I'll do is create another empty layer here for spot healing, and I'm going to heal all the spots on the face here. So you can notice there are a lot of spots here. I'm just going to use a spot healing brush and just click on these spots, and Photoshop magically just removes these spots. There we go. So the spots are all healed right now. This is the before and this is after. Okay, so it's all about symmetry here. The other thing I noticed is that the nose here is not symmetric. The left portion of the nose is kind of lower and the right portion is higher. So I'm going to use the warp tool again and I'm going to bring down the left portion of the nose. This is going to be useful when we create those triangles, so we need it to be as symmetric as possible. Okay, so basically just creating a whole bunch of control points around the nose and then pulling and pushing to see when it looks good. I'm going to speed this portion up so that you don't have to watch the whole thing. Okay, I think that is looking pretty good. I'm going to save it here. And here is a look at the before and after. Alright, so now it's time to create those triangles. This is going to be a really slow process, but it's going to be worth it at the end. So first I'm going to create a new layer here, and I'm going to select the lasso tool. I'm going to select the polygon lasso tool, and I'm going to start creating triangles on different sections of my face. Remember, I'm only creating the triangle on the left portion of my face. We're going to leave the right portion as such. So I'm going to create this triangle here. Next, I'm going to hit G for the paint tool. I'm going to hit option and select a color within this triangle. And then I'm going to paint inside the triangle with that color. So that's the first triangle. We're going to be creating hundreds of these triangles. So again, I'm going to press L for the lasso, create another triangle, G for the paint, option and select a color inside, paint inside. Again, L for the lasso, create a triangle, G for the paint, option and select a color inside, and paint. L again, and so on. So we are going to keep on doing this. I'm going to speed up this video because this is going to be a long process. Also, remember, when you get to the portions with a lot of edges, you need to create very small triangles. For example, the eyes need to have really small triangles, but portions that don't have a lot of edges and are relatively flat, like the forehead or the cheeks, the triangles can be relatively bigger. Okay, this is really boring. I'm serious, this is really boring. I'm not kidding, this is really mind-numbingly boring. I'm actually considering if it's really worth making this tutorial. I mean, I just have like 2 subscribers. Hey, what's up guys, it's been a decade since I started editing this picture and we are finally done with the triangles. So here's a before and after. This is before the triangles and this is after the triangles. So you can see there are a lot of layers that I created. I didn't want to put all the triangles in one layer. So different sections of the face represent different layers here. Okay, the next thing I want to do is grab my brush and set the flow to like 5% and set the color to completely black. And I want to paint over the shadowy section of the face just to give it a little bit of depth here. Okay, so now on to the next challenge. So you can see that there's an edge of the room in this image and there's also this door frame. I want the edge of the room to be at the center of the face and I want the door frame to be entirely removed. So that's what we'll be working on next. And I'm going to use the clone tool to do this. And we're done. Here is the before and after. Okay, so just organizing these layers a little bit here. And the next thing I want to do is there's all this stray hair coming out of the triangles here. I want this section of the face to look like it's only made up of triangles. So I'm going to use the clone tool and replace this stray hair coming out of this portion with the wall behind it. So it's only going to look like the triangles are there because the triangles are on top of this layer that I'm going to create right now. Okay, so grabbing the clone tool here and cloning this entire area out. So as you can see, we only have the triangles and just the wall behind it. Now you can also see that there's a little bit of gap between these triangles, like the one right here. These are actually good. We really need these gaps because the next thing that I'm going to do is create some stray pieces, like the pieces are actually falling off the face. So these gaps here give the feeling that they're actually breaking out and falling off. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to create another layer here and call it falling pieces. And I'm going to do the same thing that I spent a decade doing, which is getting the lasso tool, creating a triangle, but this time outside the face, and painting it with one of these colors from inside the face. So the only thing to make sure is that these triangles are of different sizes and different colors so that it looks kind of random. Okay, so another couple of years have passed and I'm done with these falling pieces here. This is the before and this is the after. Okay, so next I just want to select the falling pieces layer, go into the layer styles and select bevel and emboss. This is going to give a slight depth to each of these pieces. I'm not doing anything crazy with the settings, just turning on bevel and emboss and making sure that the depth isn't too much. I'm also not doing anything to the triangles on the face. I'm only doing this for the falling pieces that are outside the face. Okay, we're almost done. The next thing I want to do is select all the changes that we've made, all the layers, groups, transformations, duplicate them all and merge them into a single layer. I'm going to convert this layer to a smart object, and I'm going to name this layer merged and filters, because I'm going to add a camera raw filter to this smart object. Now for the camera raw filters for this image, the only changes I want to make in the basic correction sections are increasing the clarity of the image, bringing down the blacks of the image, and bringing up the whites a little bit. And the main change I wanted to make with the camera raw filters is the curve section here. I wanted to create an S curve here, bringing down the shadows and increasing the highlights so that we have a really contrasty image. So here's the before and here's the after. So that's technically the end of the tutorial, but I just went back to the image because I was not satisfied with the way that the separation between the normal section and the triangle section of the face was working. So I added a few more triangles that were reaching out from the triangle section to the normal section, and I added a liquify effect to these triangles so that they're a little bit more curved than the other triangles, and I also added a drop shadow for these triangles so that they blend in a little bit better with the other section of the face. So here's the before and after once I added that layer. Okay, don't forget to save this image and we are done with the edit. Alright, that brings us to the end of the tutorial here. Hope you guys enjoyed it, hope you learned something. If you did, make sure to like and share the videos, subscribe to the channel, and if you know of any better way to do any of the steps that I just went through here, feel free to drop a comment and let me know. Other than that, thanks for watching. As I said, these are strange times, so just stay safe. I'll see you next time.